What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to this week's installment on The Lake Show, and I really appreciate you all making me a part of your day again. Last week, I discussed week 1 of the NFL preseason, and I really dove deep into the rookie quarterbacks and, their outlook on this upcoming NFL season, how they're going to pan out, and I'm just saying, after week 2 now, I have a good feeling about each and every one of these quarterbacks. Now, it's universally known that not every first-round quarterback pans out, and I still firmly, full-heartedly believe that Drake May is going to be a bust, but everybody else, J.J. McCarthy, even though he just got injured, and we understand that, we'll talk a little bit about that later, but I didn't think J.J. McCarthy was going to start this year. I think that goes to Sam Darnold, even if J.J. McCarthy was still healthy, but Caleb Williams looking like an absolute stud. Jaden Daniels looks like a stud. Bo Nix looks like the most NFL-ready quarterback to ever come out of college, other than Andrew Luck recently. And I was very high on that. I knew Bo Nix, all those starts and throughout his college career, I knew all those starts would pan out. He's looking like the future of Denver football. Obviously, it's only preseason. We'll see later down the line. But everything I've been seeing from all these rookie quarterbacks, other than Drake May, of course, he showed a little bit of flashes in the second preseason game. So I won't bash him too much. But when it comes to every other quarterback, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, J.J. McCarthy before he got injured, Bo Nix, like all those guys, Michael Penix Jr., all these guys are showing flash and potential that everybody hopes that they have in a franchise quarterback. So we talked a little bit about that last week. Obviously, I'm a Bucked Up ambassador, so use promo code SHOW32. Get yourself 20% off any and all pre-workout orders at buckedup.com. And to show your love and support for the channel, be sure to like and subscribe. Keep up to date with new episodes. New episodes come out 9 a.m. every Tuesday morning. So let's get started for today's episode. We got a lot of NFL news to talk about, and we also are going to do a little bit preview of what's to come this upcoming weekend. College football is back this upcoming weekend, week 0. We got 3 games on Saturday. 4 games. No. Yeah, 4 games this upcoming Saturday, and we're going to do a little bit of a preview about them. There's only one really meaningful one, at least when it comes to, as far as all the college football I watch. Sorry, I don't really watch much of Montana State football. No shade to them whatsoever, but, we got a couple matchups this week, and we got one good matchup, and I think it's upset city time. I really think it's going to be an upset. But we got a lot of NFL to cover today. And the first thing we're going to talk about is, of course, the big elephant in the room when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb is still holding out. So here's the issue. Dallas needs CeeDee Lamb on the field. Dallas needs CeeDee Lamb more than probably any other team in the NFL needs a skill position player. CeeDee Lamb to the Cowboys is probably more valuable and more pivotal to an offense than Tyreek Hill is to the Dolphins. Now, maybe that's not entirely true, but what I'm really saying is of how valuable CeeDee Lamb is truly to the Dallas Cowboys. And yet Jerry Jones is still sitting on his hands, not doing anything and not giving in and not even acknowledging the fact that they do need CeeDee Lamb for this upcoming NFL season. So let's take a look at the past 2 seasons for CeeDee Lamb. He has 242 receptions in these past 2 years, 3,108 yards, and he's got 21 touchdowns. Best in the league. That includes a league with Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, and Jamar Chase, and A.J. Brown. The list goes on of great wide receivers in the NFL. But when it comes to CeeDee Lamb currently right now, as it's positioned, CeeDee Lamb arguably the top, first, second, even third best wide receiver in the entire NFL. And when it comes to value to an NFL franchise, I don't think there's anybody right now currently more important to their offense. Now, I'm excluding quarterback. We all know that quarterbacks, they make the offense go. So I'm excluding quarterbacks. But when it comes to skill position players, when it comes to weapons in the NFL, CeeDee Lamb, I can make the argument, is the most valuable and pivotal component of any offense in the NFL. If you look at CeeDee Lamb and what he's done over the past couple years, and then all of a sudden he's not there anymore, who does Dak Prescott have to throw the ball to? If you take CeeDee Lamb off or out of this entire Cowboys wide receiver core, their wide receiver core might be worse than the New England Patriots. And that is saying something. So what other receivers do the Cowboys have? Jalen Brooks, Brandon Cooks, old Brandon Cooks. He's nowhere near what he used to be whatsoever. Jalen Tolbert, Cavante Turbin, Jalen Moreno Cropper, and Cam Johnson, just to name a few. All those wide receivers on there for Dallas, yeah, I talked about last week how screwed I said New England was when it came to their wide receiving issues. But yeah, I mentioned how KJ Osborne for them is actually pretty decent. I didn't say he was a number 1 receiver, but I did say he's a solid number 2 or 3 option. KJ Osborne blows any of those other wide receivers the Dallas Cowboys have out of the water. So no matter what, when CeeDee Lamb is not on the field with Dallas, Dak Prescott has nobody to throw to. Not to mention that their run game is going to be so putrid with old-ass Zeke Elliot and a young Deuce Vaughn who showed some flash so far in the preseason. He did. He has skill. He was a great player at Kansas State, but he's still unproven in the NFL. He's nowhere near the caliber of a Saquon Barkley, a Christian McCaffrey. He's not even up there with a Najee Harris or anything like that, or a Jalen Warren. You know, Deuce Vaughn is none of those guys yet. Now, could he be? Yeah. Later in the future, or a couple years down the line, maybe. But right now, currently, as Dallas's roster is put together, this isn't a great offense if you really think about it. The offensive line is okay. The offensive line is always okay in Dallas. Really, there's never been many issues when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys offensive line. They usually have, at worst, middle of the road in the NFL, which is better than it's still better than half the league. So we can get that out of the way. But what bothers me about this entire situation is that Jerry Jones pulled the same exact shit with Emmitt Smith decades ago. After a Super Bowl win, obviously Emmitt Smith wanted to get paid. Rightfully so. He's the best running back in NFL history other than Walter Payton or Barry Sanders. He's one of the big 3 when it comes to all-time running backs in the NFL. Jerry Jones did not pay him. So, naturally, Emmitt Smith held out. He didn't show up, didn't play for the Cowboys. And then Jimmy Johnson starts the season 0-2 and goes up to the podium and just throws up his hands like basically, hey, I need my damn running back. I need my all-pro running back. I need the best running back in the NFL back on this team. Now, after that happened, Jerry Jones obviously paid the man, which it shouldn't have even gotten to that point in the first place. I really don't understand what Jerry Jones, I don't get what his game plan is. He said in the offseason, this past offseason recently, that he was going all in. What on God's green earth is all in Jerry Jones's mind? Because all in means you're putting all your eggs in one basket. You are throwing all the chips on the table. You are going all in. Signing old Zeke Elliot, drafting subpar, adding no additional wide receiver help that is notable at least. Like, what upgrades have Dallas really made in the offseason? I can tell you right now, none. Everybody in the NFC East got better, excluding the Giants. Daniel Jones just got back. 2 pick sixes. I think it was 2 pick sixes, I believe. Either way, turnover machine. I changed my mind on who's going to finish last in the NFC East. It's going to be the Giants, and it's not going to be close. It's going to be between them, the Raiders, and New England, who's getting that first overall pick and getting Carson Beck from the Georgia Bulldogs this next upcoming year. But currently, right now, the Dallas Cowboys are in a world of trouble. It's quite obvious. And the fact that CeeDee Lamb is still holding out, that if I'm a Dallas Cowboy fan, I'm shaking my head, first of all, at Jerry Jones, because this man said all in. We all know what all in means. But I don't get what Jerry Jones' objective is by not paying CeeDee Lamb. Now, I know the issue is you have CeeDee Lamb to pay, you have Micah Parsons coming up at the end of next year, and you have Dak Prescott. I get it, you're roped into these 3 players, but the fact that you would already start contract talks with Dak Prescott before you pay CeeDee Lamb or get a deal even remotely close to done with CeeDee Lamb, that makes absolutely no sense. Like, you need CeeDee Lamb. I don't think the Cowboys, especially Jerry Jones, I really don't think he understands how valuable CeeDee Lamb is to this entire offense. If CeeDee Lamb does not start the season with the Cowboys, if he does not play the first couple games, Dallas is going to get themselves into a hole early. And they're going to be clawing tooth and nail throughout the rest of the season to try and get a first-round bye or to even squeak into the wild card game again. But if we're being honest, it's Dallas. Like Stephen A. always says on ESPN First Take, they are an accident waiting to happen. And for all intents and purposes, I think Dallas is going to lose in the wild card or in the divisional. Again, they have not been to an NFC championship since before I was born. I'm 24 years old. That's a long, long time. I was not a thought the last time the Cowboys went to an NFC championship game, let alone win a Super Bowl or even make a Super Bowl. I have not been alive on this planet when Dallas has made a Super Bowl. I have not been alive yet. They need CeeDee Lamb badly. This whole season is going to get flipped on its head if Jerry Jones doesn't pull his head out of his ass and actually pays CeeDee Lamb. Now, I already said multiple times that I am not against players getting their money in the NFL. But you have to be selective with who you pay and when you pay and how you pay them. Are you going to front load the contract? Are you going to back load the contract? Are you going to give them player options? Like, all those things matter. But the problem is you're Dallas. Dallas's offense is a BB gun without CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb opens up the entire field for the rest of the offense. Lord knows if the Cowboys are going to be able to run the ball this year with any effective measure at all. But when it comes to the passing game, we all know, I will say, Dak Prescott is a good quarterback. He's not great. He's not worth $60 million a year. But if you pay him $60 million a year, congratulations. You guarantee you're never going to make a Super Bowl for the next 10 years of existence. So, that's neither here nor there. But the fact of the matter is, without CeeDee Lamb, this offense is putrid. This wide receiving core is not good. Brandon Cooks is okay, but Brandon Cooks is up in age, old. Brandon Cooks is not what he used to be early on in his career, like with the Saints. But the reality is, this wide receiving core, without CeeDee Lamb, is probably worse than the New England Patriots. And New England currently has the worst rated wide receiving core in the entire NFL. 32 out of 32. They're the worst, statistically. And they're the worst according to Pro Football Focus. But if you take CeeDee Lamb off the Cowboys roster, if you take CeeDee Lamb and just, you don't play him, this wide receiving core, in my opinion, is way, 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 way worse than New England's. I would take New England's wide receiving core over Dallas's without CeeDee Lamb. With CeeDee Lamb, no question, I'm taking the Cowboys' wide receiving core. But CeeDee Lamb is still holding out. I don't know what Jerry Jones is thinking. He pulled this stunt once with Emmitt Smith, and look how that turned out for the early part of the season. 0-2, Jimmy Johnson throwing up his hands at the podium like, hey, I need my running back, man. And then they go on to win the Super Bowl once they pay him. If they do, they're not going to win the Super Bowl if they pay CeeDee Lamb. But they will be more viable in the NFC playoff race and in the NFC playoffs because they still will make the playoffs. They are the Cowboys. But this is what you have. You have to pay the man soon, and you have to get a deal done now. Like, you have to get this done before week 1 of the season. Add this to the headaches that the Dallas Cowboys typically go through each and every single year. It's a shame. Jerry Jones is his own worst enemy. When it comes to any decision-making in the NFL, Jerry Jones is his own worst enemy. He cannot ever get out of his own way. That's the reality of the Dallas Cowboys. You don't pay CeeDee Lamb, guess what? It's going to be a long, long season for you guys. If you do pay him, guess what? You're back in the playoffs and then getting one and done. You'll lose to Green Bay again in the playoffs. It's okay. But if you want any chance to at least be somewhat formidable in the NFC, yeah, you better pay CeeDee Lamb, and you better pay him now. All right, next topic we're going to go over. The Atlanta Falcons recently traded for Matthew Judon from the New England Patriots. So this clearly shows that New England is basically in full tank mode. New England, most likely, they're up there with the Giants and the Raiders, like I said about 10 minutes ago, that they'll be all fighting for the first overall pick of next year's draft. And I think whoever gets that first overall pick is going to draft Carson Beck from Georgia or Quinn Ewers from Texas. We'll see. So a quarterback is going number 1 overall next year because the Giants need a quarterback terribly. The Patriots probably will need a quarterback terribly. But again, it's not really their fault because they don't have anybody to throw the ball to. And the Raiders will sure as heck draft a quarterback next year. Gardner Minshew is not the answer. I'm sorry, Alex. I mean, it's bad. Raider Nation is bad right now. But I will say, the Falcons, I questioned their draft pick of Michael Penix Jr. back in April. I questioned it because you already paid Kirk Cousins so much money to come to your franchise and lead that team. And now the Falcons traded for Matthew Judon. Not necessarily a Myles Garrett or a Von Miller or a Greg Rousseau or an Aaron Donald or a TJ Watt kind of player, because he's definitely up in age, but he's definitely still a good NFL player. He's definitely still a good pass rusher. So I got to thinking a little bit, because I predicted that the Falcons would have drafted Dallas Turner, the edge rusher from Alabama, in this year's draft, when they turned the draft upside down and took Michael Penix Jr. So we all questioned that for a long time, which understandably and justifiably, I guess we kind of questioned that, because you're paying a quarterback a big chunk of money to come to your team, and then you're drafting his predecessor. So this actually makes a lot of sense now, because you can always find a pass rusher, whether that be in free agency, whether that be through trading or the NFL draft. You can always find pass rushers. Maybe not superstars like TJ Watt and Myles Garrett, maybe not always those kind of guys, but solid nonetheless, like guys like an Ed Oliver or Greg Rousseau or Hassan Reddick. Even those kind of players. But there's one thing you can't find all the time, and that's a franchise quarterback. So drafting Michael Penix makes a lot more sense now, because they actually went out made sure that their future is secure, and they have a guy that can be a quality starter for the foreseeable future for the Falcons. We all know that Kirk Cousins is Kirk Cousins. We know this. We know him. We know what he is as a quarterback. He's been in the league long enough that nothing else should surprise us. Who knows? But Atlanta, I think they have easily one of the best rosters, at least young rosters in the NFL. You know, there's not many holes. They remind me of the Minnesota Vikings. They don't have many holes on this team. Wide receivers, they're good. Running back, good. Tight end, good. Offensive line, solid. Defense, good. Great. You know, the only question mark really was quarterback. You know, you had Desmond Ridder, gross. You had Taylor Heineke, worse. And you had Marcus Mariota, deserved a second chance in my opinion the year after. But you had Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke taking snaps. And now you upgrade Kirk Cousins, which is light years ahead of those two. But it's possible Michael Penix Jr. could be light years ahead of Kirk Cousins when it comes to athletic ability, passing ability in general. I think Michael Penix is going to be a special player in the NFL. But it makes sense that, you know, a lot of people question the draft pick of Michael Penix Jr. back in April, but now looking back on it, they pretty much solved their pass rush issue. That's been one of the biggest Achilles heels for the Falcons, is that they could not get after the quarterback, really. They didn't have that set guy that can deliver in the clutch when it comes to getting pressure on the quarterback. Now they have that. Matthew Judon may not be what he used to be, but he's still solid nonetheless, and he definitely shores up the defensive line for the Atlanta Falcons. So now it makes more sense making that draft pick of Michael Penix. You have a quarterback, Kirk Cousins, $100 million man. We know. We don't know how he's going to play, but he's coming off a major injury and a major surgery, so obviously health is a concern. The offense, he's got weapons, he's got protection, he's got a defense. So you'll know very early on how far Kirk Cousins can take you. You shored up the defense with adding Matthew Judon, and you basically have an ace in the hole when it comes to a future franchise quarterback. So I think the Falcons are in a perfect position to propel themselves in the future. Super Bowl maybe? Not this year. But there's basically no holes on this entire team. This is pretty much a complete team. Solid defense. Now they added Matthew Judon, finally shoring up the pass rush. Solid offensive line. They got Kyle Pitts at tight end. Hopefully they finally use him. Unlike Arthur Smith, who was allergic to throwing Kyle Pitts the ball at all. You have Bijan Robinson at running back, Drake London at wide receiver, and a bunch of other young wide receivers on that team. And now you got Kirk Cousins and or Michael Penix. And Michael Penix is, you know, even though Kirk Cousins is not a Hall of Famer in my opinion, he's still a solid quarterback. He's a vet. Michael Penix will learn well behind him. It reminds me of Patrick Mahomes behind Alex Smith for that year in Kansas City. Now, I'm not saying Michael Penix is going to be, you know, Patrick Mahomes, but I'm saying he's learning from a vet, you know, an overlooked vet who's better than people give him credit for. You know, I think Michael Penix has a bright future in Atlanta. Who knows? Maybe a Super Bowl is in his grasp in a couple years. But right now, the Falcons for sure shored up their defense and their pass rush by trading for Matthew Judon. I love the trade. And now that they did this trade, I love the pick of Michael Penix even more. Because you shored up the defense and pass rush, and now you have your quarterback for the future, learning behind a good quality veteran starter like Kirk Cousins. So Atlanta is primed and ready for some good years ahead of them. All right, I wanted to do a little retrospective. I wanted to do a little throwback. Obviously, we know the 2022 NFL draft, quarterback-wise, was okay. Not really. We all know it was garbage. Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis, enough said. That entire draft class was absolutely putrid, horrible. But I also want to talk about I'm going to talk about the 2021 quarterback draft class and how this was one of the most hyped quarterback draft classes of all time, but it's been very underwhelming. So let's go through them. The surefire pick, Trevor Lawrence. First quarterback off the board was Trevor Lawrence. From out of Clemson, he was looked at as the next big thing. He was the most anticipated quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. A surefire candidate to succeed in the NFL no matter where he went. And for the most part, Trevor Lawrence is succeeding in the NFL for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But, that's a big but. Obviously, a lot of things haven't gone their way. Injuries have derailed him a little bit over the past 2 seasons. And if we're being honest, he never should have been put in the position to be under Urban Meyer. And we all know what happened at that debacle of a coaching hire and all the crap that went down with Urban Meyer in Jacksonville. We get that. But Trevor Lawrence, he's shown flashes of that greatness, but I would love to know, why is he so turnover prone? This man has led the league, been at near the top of the league each and every single year he's been in the league in turnovers. Interceptions, fumbles, you name it. Trevor Lawrence is a turnover machine. Now, he still shows flashes of greatness. He did lead one of the biggest playoff comebacks in history against the LA Chargers, which Chargers always choke, so that doesn't shock me. But Trevor Lawrence, he's shown good flashes, but at the same time, I feel like there's still so much more that he could be showing, especially the turnovers. The turnovers are absolutely horrible. And these aren't even the interceptions he's throwing, at least when I've watched them. Some are players making great plays, like a Sauce Gardner diving interception sort of thing. Sometimes players just make great plays. Big-time players step up in big games. Good old-fashioned Santana Moss quote right there. But it's true. Guys like Sauce Gardner, Minka Fitzpatrick, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, like all those guys just make plays on the defensive side of the football. We get all that. But a lot of the interceptions that Trevor Lawrence has thrown, they've just been horrible reads. Horrible decision-making. So that's the first bit of the 2021 quarterback draft class. Trevor Lawrence has done okay, but he hasn't done anything special, and he sure hasn't shown anything, at least in my opinion, in being a number 1 overall pick. Let's go to another quarterback. Zach Wilson. Hot garbage. Absolutely trash. People were touting this cat to be one of the rising stars in the NFL. People saw this cat's pro day at BYU, watching him roll to his left and just sling it, a 60-yard bomb, just across his body. We all felt, a lot of people, I'm guilty of it, we all fell in love with Zach Wilson at the BYU pro day. Truth be told, he is possibly one of the worst first-round quarterbacks ever drafted. Right up there with Manziel. Manziel at least won games. At least a couple games. But Zach Wilson's decision-making and just overall talent as a quarterback is not good whatsoever. He was supposed to be the savior of New York Jet football. Obviously, that didn't pan out early on. They bring in Aaron Rodgers. Now, finally, I felt like, okay, Zach Wilson has a chance now to learn behind one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. That'll only benefit him. And then Aaron Rodgers gets hurt in 4 plays, and then next thing you know, Zach Wilson is back to Zach Wilson, throwing interceptions on stupid decision-making and terrible reads on the defense. Zach Wilson is not an NFL quarterback. He is a backup at best, and that might be generous. Obviously, he's done in New York. He was shipped off to Denver, and I don't even think he'll see the field in Denver. Not with Sean Payton, not with Bo Nix on that team, The way Bo Nix is playing right now, Bo Nix will be the starter before Thanksgiving easily. If he keeps playing like he's playing, Bo Nix is going to be a starter immediately like that in the NFL. But Zach Wilson, goodbye. Your career's done. Garbage. Overhyped. And I was one of those. I can't believe I was advocating for Pittsburgh to draft this cat. I would have rather had Kenny Pickett. And Kenny Pickett is awful. Kenny Pickett's quarterback draft class is awful too. Like, that one's pretty bad. But I feel like the 2021 draft class just had so much hype built around it, and it's just been let down. Let's go to another quarterback, Mac Jones, who now is Trevor Lawrence's backup after failing in New England. But at the same time, I said it before that he wasn't really given a fair shot because New England has no weapons, especially when Bill Belichick brought him in. He had nobody to throw the football to still, only Juju Smith-Schuster, but he was up in age and he's not a number one. I said this about Juju before. He's a solid number 2 and number 3, but he's not a number 1. But Mac Jones had really no chance of succeeding in New England, despite making the playoffs his rookie year. We all thought after that he'd do something great. He'd start his trajectory to replace the shoes of Brady, to fill his shoes. Nope. Tanked. Absolute god-awful trash. Mac Jones now shipped off to Jacksonville to be Trevor Lawrence's backup. Another quarterback we're going to talk about, Trey Lance. God almighty, did the 49ers reach on this one. 1 year of starting because of COVID. Trey Lance had the highest ceiling, in my opinion, out of all the quarterbacks based off his talent, but he had the lowest floor. He was either going to be the best thing to ever come out of the NFL draft, or he's going to be what he is, a bust, and a third-string quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys now. Because if we all remember, guess who else? Guess what other quarterback was drafted the same class as Trey Lance? Brock Purdy at the very last pick. I've been critical of Brock Purdy. He's a million light years ahead of Trey Lance. 49ers made the biggest blunder. They were basically saved by Brock Purdy when it came to the quarterback situation. Brock Purdy steered them back into the right direction after the entire Trey Lance garbage. Now, Trey Lance did get hurt early on, but you could tell even in practice, this dude's mechanics were horrible. His throwing the football was like a chore to him. He just was not good whatsoever. So he's been a letdown. How about the one more quarterback we'll talk about from the 2021 class, and that's Justin Fields. Oh, Justin Fields was supposed to be the savior of Chicago football. Easily the most talented quarterback at that time Chicago ever had. Turnover prone. This dude cannot read a defense, it seems like, and we're going to talk a little bit about him in a couple minutes when I talk about the Steelers. But his decision-making, awful. He loves to throw interceptions. He loves to fumble the football. He is very athletic. I will give him that. He is one heck of an athlete. And at times, he can really show off the arm accuracy and the arm strength. But this man, he's won like 5 games in his entire career so far. That's not good enough. If you look at the entire 2021 quarterback draft class, of all these first-round quarterbacks, Lawrence, Wilson, Jones, Fields, Lance, all these guys are basically busts. The one who's not Trevor Lawrence, he basically isn't really doing much, though. Not necessarily all his fault because of injuries, but still. Lawrence, Wilson, Jones, Fields, and Lance. This was one of the most hyped-up draft classes for quarterbacks of all time. And it's been one of the biggest letdowns in recent memory coming from an NFL draft, at least from the quarterback position perspective. The rest of that draft was great. But the quarterback play from the 2021 draft class, something to be desired. All right, let's move into our college football week 0 preview. So I'll save the big game for last. So we're going to have SMU versus Nevada. I have no doubt that SMU is going to beat Nevada. SMU might make some noise this year in the ACC. They could. With Rhett Lashley as I believe he's their head coach or OC. I think he's their head coach now. He was with the University of Miami. I wish we still had him as our OC. He was fantastic. But SMU is going to beat the brakes off Nevada. New Mexico versus Montana State. I don't know too much about either of these two teams, so I'm going to take... Obviously, I'll take New Mexico because Montana State, I believe they're D2 or D1 AA, something like that. But, I'll take New Mexico over Montana State. And then we got Hawaii versus Delaware State. I'll take Hawaii all live long day when it comes to that. But let's talk about the big game of week 0 in college football, and that is Florida State versus Georgia Tech, an early on ACC matchup. And this is going to say a lot about both teams. You got DJ Ungalale versus Haynes King at the quarterback battle. So, why is this such a big game? Well, Florida State, you have one of the longest regular season win streaks currently at 17 straight regular season wins. Everybody wants to prove, especially Florida State, they want to prove what kind of team they are this year and how it was a mistake leaving them out of the college football playoff last year. Doesn't change the fact you still got beat by Georgia 60-3. Sorry, you guys got Florida State FS who? You got smacked by Georgia by 60 in the Orange Bowl. Now I get it, a lot of players didn't play because they were just prepping for the NFL draft and they didn't feel like they had anything to play for, being snubbed out of the college football playoff. And here's the thing, I've talked about it. When the college football playoff was created, at its inception, it was about getting the 4 best teams going at it for the national championship. I argued against putting Florida State in because of their performance against Louisville when Jordan Travis got hurt. If Jordan Travis doesn't get hurt, Florida State beats Louisville probably by 30-40 in the ACC championship game, and then they're cruising to the college football playoff. They may not win it. They probably wouldn't. I don't think they would have beaten Washington, a Texas, a Bama, or a Michigan. I don't think they would have beat any of the top 4 teams that made the college football playoff last year. But Florida State has something to prove this year, and especially DJ Ungalale, former Clemson quarterback, former Oregon State quarterback, and now the leader of the Seminoles. There is a lot riding on what Mike Norvell has built, and we're going to find out real quickly what FSU is made of, especially after losing guys like Jared Verse, Keon Coleman to the NFL draft. Same thing with Jordan Travis, their great quarterback. Is this going to be the same Florida State team from last year? No. Hot take, I don't think it is. Georgia Tech, they're bringing back a lot of talent. They're bringing back a lot of productivity on this entire Georgia Tech team, especially led by Haynes King at quarterback. So we're going to see how well Georgia Tech matches up with. Obviously, it's going to be a tough first game, probably as tough as it's going to get in the ACC. You got FSU, Miami, and Clemson, and Louisville. Those are looked at as the top 4 dogs in the ACC, and Georgia Tech's going up against one of them. So this is a great early season test for Georgia Tech to see where they stand. And I argued, and I know there are still Florida State fans bitching and moaning that they didn't make the playoff last year. Suck it up. Because you would have got the brakes beat off you by anybody else in that college football playoff. And for all intents and purposes, you still got the brakes beat off you by Georgia. I made the comparison months ago between the Ohio State case back in 2014 compared to Florida State's case of 2023. Both teams made their conference championships and both of them won. But when Cardell Jones took over for the injured JT Barrett, That offense for Ohio State did not skip a beat. In some instances, it looked way better. Now, this is because they were feeding Zeke Elliot at the time way more than they were when Barrett was under center. But they beat the brakes off of Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. Louisville went up against Florida State last year's ACC championship game. Florida State won, but they won 16-6. They did not win by a convincing margin. If Louisville had any sense of a quarterback for that game, Louisville probably beats Florida State. What I'm saying is, at the inception of the college football playoff, the original four, it was about getting the four best teams going at it for the national championship. I can make the argument Ohio State was 100% one of the best four teams that year. Maybe at the time I was biased and didn't want to see it because they had their third string quarterback, and I didn't think they were that good. Well, they beat Bama. They ran all over Nick Saban's defense, and they absolutely bludgeoned Marcus Mariota and the Ducks and the Natty. This Florida State team barely squeaked by Louisville, thankfully got left out of the playoff because they were just not the same team. Even though part of me feels like, yeah, they kind of got snubbed. They were undefeated. Same as Michigan. They deserved to go. Why not? But at the same time, they were not the same team without Jordan Travis. Not even remotely close. We saw that in the bowl game. And I don't care that that a bunch of the starters decided not to play. That just doesn't show heart. I don't think that shows heart whatsoever. But you got beat 65-3. So, were you really one of the four best teams? No. Now this year, Florida State looks to bounce back. But I think Georgia Tech with Haynes King is going to upset the Seminoles in week 0. So those are my picks for college football week 0 this upcoming Saturday. I'm taking SMU to beat Nevada, New Mexico to beat Montana State, Hawaii to beat Delaware State, and I'm taking the Yellowjackets of Georgia Tech to upset the Florida State Seminoles in week 0. All right, we're going to talk about one last topic, and that is who should the Pittsburgh Steelers start? This is killing me inside because as a Steeler fan, we have to be honest. This quarterback situation that we've been in since Ben Roethlisberger has retired has been one of the biggest letdowns in Steelers history. Seeing the pitiful quarterback play from everybody since Big Ben retired has been absolutely putrid. If you think about all the quarterbacks that Pittsburgh has gone through over the past couple years, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett, Duck Hodges, Joshua Dobbs, there's just none of it is good. Absolutely none of it. And watching Russ and Justin Fields in the preseason so far, now I get it. It is preseason. I'm sorry. I'm more concerned than ever. Here's why I'm not as worried as a lot of people I think should be. We're paying Russ basically $1 million. As we all know, Denver's covering the bill for us. And then Justin Fields, we basically traded nothing to get him. So we have two quarterbacks who are more talented than anything we've had since Big Ben. Easily, by a country mile, they're better than Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph, Josh Dobbs. Way, way better. But why does it feel like this quarterback situation this year is going to be absolutely worse? So far, in the preseason, Justin Fields is completing 70% of his passes, and then Russ is also completing 80% of his passes. Now, this is limited snaps, I know. But Russ has been, this is Saturday against Buffalo. Russell Wilson was sacked 3 times against Buffalo, and Justin Fields was sacked another time. And let me tell you, Justin Fields needs to learn to hold on to the damn ball. Justin Fields cannot keep fumbling like this. Like, I understand how Chicago Bears felt. I understand how the Bears fans felt now. It's just pitiful watching it. And yet Pittsburgh's offensive line it's still garbage. It's still hot garbage. It really is. It's hard to watch. They can't even get a push up front, especially against backups, against the Bills backups. Come on. When it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think this is the first year. And listen, I'm a ride or die Steeler fan. I will always support the Steelers no matter what. But I'm sorry, I'm going to be critical of them. This quarterback situation is going to be the most toxic in the entire NFL. And I don't think it's going to be close. You have an old vet in Russell Wilson, who I don't know how went from an MVP candidate in Seattle to an absolute train wreck dumpster fire in Denver. And now a shell of his former self in Pittsburgh, who lost all his confidence. And you got Justin Fields, one of the most talented quarterbacks to come out in the NFL draft, but absolutely cannot read a defense, can't hold on to the football, can't make good decisions, can't win football games, but he's athletic. So who's going to get the nod week 1 against Atlanta? I have no idea, but I could tell you who I'd rather see. I'd rather see Justin Fields because at least he can run around. Russell Wilson, when I watch Russ play, it seems like that man has lost all his confidence. I don't understand how it still baffles me how he went from an MVP candidate in Seattle to a dumpster fire in Denver to a shell of his former self in Pittsburgh. And you got Justin Fields, one of the most loved quarterbacks in the NFL among the players, which, okay, cool. Can you win more than 5 games? Can you win something, please? Enough with the turnovers. Enough with the crappy offensive line play. Enough with the negativity. I swear, this is going to be... I think this is going to be the longest year of all of our Steeler lives. This is going to be a tough year. This might be the first year we have a losing season for the first time in 15, 16 years. There's a couple saving graces for Pittsburgh, though. Cleveland, who they have a great roster, but their quarterback dilemma might be even worse than Pittsburgh's. The Ravens. Sorry, but can Lamar Jackson and the Ravens live up to what they're hyped to be? Because they've let down before. And then Joe Burrow with Cincinnati. His injury, major concern. Those are the only saving graces for Pittsburgh this year. They're in a division where 2 teams have quarterback issues, one who stinks and one who can't stay healthy. And then you got the Ravens, but, they're always choking in the playoffs and the postseason. So, personally, I think Pittsburgh will start Justin Fields week 1 against Atlanta. But I could be completely wrong. We'll see. But all I know is this is going to be a fun NFL season, but a long NFL season, especially if you're a Steeler fan. But we're going to the Super Bowl. And that's going to wrap it up this week on The Lake Show, everyone. Be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, leave some comments down below. I really appreciate you making me a part of your day. I'm your host, Dominic Lakeo. God bless.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want, and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up! It's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not working out.